are listening to the Paranormal Chronicles radio show. Here is your host, paranormal researcher and author of the best-selling A Most Haunted House, Gavin Lee Davis.
Welcome, my name is G.L. Davies, founder of the ParanormalChronicles.com and author of the best-selling true account that is shocking the world. Dare you read Haunted Horror of Haverfordwest Alone in Bed at Night? Thank you for joining us on our ongoing journey into the unknown as we broadcast to you from beautiful Pembrokeshire, West Wales. The Paranormal Chronicles podcast is brought to you by sixth-books.com. Visit www.sixth-books.com today and explore a world of the paranormal, the unknown and the mysterious. So visit www.sixth-books.com today. If you're new to the series, then make sure you follow, as all our followers are put into a monthly prize draw for one lucky follower to win a paranormal book. And we also have a quarterly prize where we have an Amazon voucher up for grabs. At the end of this very show, we will announce our latest monthly winner. So followers, stay tuned. Follow and explore our incredible archive for the very best paranormal researchers, Bigfoot, ghost, UFO and demon witness accounts, and on-location reports. The Paranormal Chronicles podcast offers you the very best in paranormal and spiritual information. So follow, download and listen. If you have a theory, experience or research to share, then find us on Instagram or Facebook as the Paranormal Chronicles. Tweet at Parachron on tonight's show. How did living in a haunted house change one man's life forever? What effect did seeing an incredibly detailed UFO encounter have on his life? What entities exist outside our field of visibility? Is Bigfoot, ghosts, UFOs and other beings operating on another frequency? What paranormal techniques and equipment should you be using for investigations, and what not to eat? This is an interview you do not want to miss. Download and share to all your paranormal friends. Yes, it is that good. My guest is Kieran Woodhouse, the author of the must-read An Introduction to Paranormal Investigation and host of the Paranormal Paradigm podcast. Kieran offers valuable experience and insight into the paranormal world, and his talks at conventions are fast becoming the hot topic talk of the community. This interview will change your perception of the paranormal world forever. On with the show. Our listeners are going to love this, so let's get straight into it. You grew up in a haunted home, so let's tell our listeners what happened there and how did those experiences set you up for your paranormal journey?
I did grow up in a haunted house. It was the first one we lived in was a flat. It was like a masonette, so we lived on the top floor and there was an elderly couple that lived below us. Go up into the corridor, past their front door, up into our front door and then up the stairs. So they had no access to those stairs. It was only us that would be able to go up those stairs. And we used to have a child gate at the top of the stairs for me and my brother for safety reasons. If my mum ever forgot to lock that child gate, it would bang several times a night just to tell her you need to come and lock the child gate. So that was quite an interesting occurrence because there was no draft. Looking back at it, there were no windows in this hallway on this staircase. It was just solid brick wall all around it. So that I can't imagine what it would have been that would have made it slam. We also used to go out and come back regularly to find that the living room furniture had rearranged itself in as much as the ornaments had moved around the living room. So back when my mum's nan was alive, so my great nan, she would always come round and tell my mum that she was decorating the room incorrectly and she should do it like this. They used to get into arguments quite frequently, and when she left, my mum would put it back to how she wanted it, and that would be it. Whenever we would come back, if we'd been out for a meal or out to see relatives, we'd come back to find that the ornaments were exactly how my great nan would like them. And I remember, distinctly at about 5 or 6 years old, seeing my mum shouting into thin air, "Stop doing this, just leave my ornaments alone." And what was interesting as a child was to see my mum, who I was only ever used to really shouting at me, shouting at this invisible force, this thing that I was aware was able to move things around the room and to slam the child gate and things like that. So it really piqued my interest because it really at a young age got me thinking that there were things that I can't see. I can't see these things, but they're having an effect on my life, on my world. We then moved house, only not far up the road really, less than a mile, but we moved into a proper house. And we didn't know at the time, but when all of our family came round to see the house, we realised that my granddad, my dad's dad, was born in that very house. And we didn't know that, and that was a huge shock to us. And my granddad, just cool as you like, walked through the door and went, "Adrian," which is my dad, "Adrian, I bet you didn't know this, but I was born in this house. And we all thought he was joking, but it turns out it was absolutely true. And what that's led to is hauntings by my dad's family now. So we've swapped sides, and we don't really get anything. I don't live there anymore, but we didn't, and they don't get anything now from my mum's side of the family. And she believes it's because she doesn't want to be stepping on the toes of my dad's side of the family. And we quite often have orbs, physical size of a football-sized orbs moving through the house. We get the smell of my dad's auntie, which was a distinct smell because she was a dinner lady at school, and so she used to smell of chip grease and cheap perfume. Yeah,
lovely.
And it's a very distinct smell, and you can walk downstairs some mornings and you think, Beryl's been here then. And, you just call out, hello, Beryl. We have her ornaments that we took from her house after she died. Families kind of distribute ornaments so they don't get taken by the council and stuff. And they quite often move on their own accord across the coffee table. Things have constantly surrounded me in terms of the paranormal. It got me thinking from a very young age. But as I always say, people get older, they have to get a job, they end up getting a girlfriend or a boyfriend, and life takes over, and you can't really find time for your passion because you're too busy earning a wage. And it happens to far too many people who, artistic people who've got fantastic talents. They just don't have time or money to be able to express these talents to the world. And that happened with myself. So I kind of lost all passion and all interest in this field as I went out into the big wide world. I had a really bad rugby accident, damaged my knee, and I was in a wheelchair for 3 months. So I had nothing better to do than to watch YouTube and get fat. I started watching things like Ancient Aliens and things like that, and one thing led to another, and my passion was reignited, and that kind of brings me up to where we are now, really.
But you never felt threatened by the presences or the activity in the house, I take it?
Never, ever. I mean, I was too young thinking about, when we lived in the flat. We moved out when I was 8 or 9, so I remember lying on the living room floor, colouring in, and hearing the child gate slam, asking my mum, what's that? And she would just say, oh, it's just my nan telling me I've left it open again. So I think I was too young to really know what was going on. And then when we moved house, I lived in that house up until about 5 years ago or so, mid-20s, and I never ever felt threatened. It was always downstairs. There was never anything upstairs. It was always the kitchen area, the living room area. I mean, it's a tiny council semi-detached, 2 up, 2 down, so there wasn't a lot of rooms, but it did tend to be more focused downstairs where the smells were and the ornaments would move. And lately my mum has actually seen a man in the garden several times, but she only ever sees the back of him. He's always facing away from her, and she doesn't know why, she doesn't know who he is. She can describe what he's wearing from the back, but she doesn't know who he is. So there is still activity ongoing.
Does he look like a modern man, or is he someone?
No, so he's got a flat cap on. Looks like he's wearing a waistcoat with long. I guess to describe it to the listeners, it would be like a Peaky Blinders type look, Yeah. So the flat cap, the waistcoat, the long sleeves, and she can never see him really from knees down. So the first time she saw him, she was ironing in the kitchen, and you get a feeling that something's watching you. So she looked out the kitchen window, which goes into the back garden, and she could just see shoulders and a head in front of the window looking down the garden. She was like, well, that's strange. So she went outside to see who it was, what he wanted, and there was no one there. And then about 2 or 3 weeks later, she was mowing the lawn, and she felt like, again, something was watching. So she turned round, and this time she's looking up the garden. So she's looking at the kitchen window, and to the side of the house is the gate that goes up the side of the house. And he was stood in front of the gate looking up the side of the house towards the main road. And again, just the back of him, but his legs kind of cut off from the knees. Now, what I find interesting is there was a guy who lived there before us, an elderly couple, and they were disabled, and the one guy only had one leg.
Oh.
And I often wonder, and I've discussed this with my mum, is the person that she's seeing the guy that lived there, this old guy, and that would explain the lack of legs.
Fascinating. One of the theories that I've been very keen on and have written about in my own books is that entities or spirits are not necessarily spirits or ghosts in that respect, but we are having a glimpse back in time. So that person is in his own time, in his space, and maybe he's standing on a part of the garden that no longer exists. Maybe it was lower. Maybe there was a path there. Those two times, our time and his time, just breeze past each other for a few seconds so that your mum could see him in his time, and he wouldn't have been aware of it, but maybe he is. It's the theory, I think, was presented in The Others, the movie The Others, where
great film,
you could in essence, haunt yourself. So that's fascinating, absolutely amazing.
There was a program, synchronicity. I'm a big believer in synchronicity. And what you've just explained there is a theory that I'm currently working on in my own mind, and I've proposed it to a few of the groups that I've spoken to. There was a program on BBC, I think you can find it on the iPlayer. It's called The Living and the Dead, and it has this exact theory whereby there's a guy who lived a couple of hundred years ago on a farm, and he feels that he's going mad. Everyone thinks he's going crazy because he's seeing things that that aren't there. It then turns out that it's his relative who's living in our time who's gone back to investigate her family's history, and what's happening is the timelines are crossing, and they both think that they're ghosts. They both think that they're being haunted by the other, but in fact they're both just living in their own timeline. And that's the theory that I'm currently working on at the moment, because if time isn't linear, which I don't think it is, it would be extremely possible that when you're sat doing a spirit board talking to somebody, you're actually talking to somebody who's conducting a spirit board for 100 years ago in their own timeline, or maybe 100 years in the future, and you're the ghost.
Exactly, and I love that theory because, as you said, time is a man-made concept. Space Absolutely, is real. A great example of this is one of our listeners, Michael from Preston. He'll be listening to this, and he shared a story with me. He woke up one night because he could hear someone in the bathroom, like somebody had knocked a glass, and he has a glass by the side of the sink that he keeps his toothpaste in and his toothbrush. And he was like, what's going on? What's going on? So he got up, and for a brief second, as he turned the light on, he was convinced he saw himself brushing his teeth.
Wow.
So in essence, if we use that theory we're discussing there, he is haunting himself. So tonight, hypothetically, somebody could hear some footsteps going up and down the stairs, thinking, oh my gosh, is an intruder, a burglar, or a ghost, or something worse. But in fact, it was them yesterday, or an hour ago, or tomorrow, or 10 years in the future. And there is this theory that we could, in essence, haunt ourselves.
That's fantastic. I've got a big, great grin on my face. I love it.
So Michael from Preston, if you're listening tonight, thank you very much for that story. It's fascinating. And I think with the paranormal, to take a quote from Roddy Piper, the wrestler, just when you think you've got all the answers, I go and change the questions. And that's the great thing about the paranormal. There's not a person alive that understands the intricacies of time, space, the universe, and the human mind. And everything is a wonderful possibility. So you also, this is fantastic as well, because this is quite rare, but you also had a UFO encounter. Could you tell us more about your experience and how this affected you?
Yeah, this is when I talk about synchronicity, that this was really the gateway that's led me to where I am now. So not long after I had my knee operation, so I was out of action for a year or so in terms of playing sports, but I eventually got back into it, and me and my brother used to go training. We would train a place called Bromsgrove, so it was about 10 miles or so away from where we lived. And coming back the one night, we would travel over country lanes, and the country lane would run perpendicular with the M5, and you always knew the M5 was there. It was probably separated by half a mile or so of farmland, but you knew it was there because sometimes you'd see the lights through the break of the trees, or you could hear the traffic, or what the M5 is like, you would also hear the roadworks, constant roadworks. And so you knew the motorway was there. But this one evening, as we were climbing up this country hill, we saw a big bright light out the corner of our eyes, and we instantly knew that's not the motorway, that's something else. And I originally thought search helicopter, someone's gone missing, or something like that. So as we keep climbing and we get to the top of this place is called Romsley. So for anyone that's listening in the UK, if you're aware of a place called Romsley, or if you want to Google it, you can see what it looks like. As we get to the top, the tree's clear and you can see for miles. And ironically, it's a great place that people go to spot UFOs because it's such a big open space. You can see to the other side of Birmingham. It's a great location. As we got to the top, this craft became visible, and it was around about 1,000 feet away and 1,000 feet up, so it really wasn't that far at all. And I originally asked my brother, that looks rectangular, but it wasn't until our eyes adjusted and we began to realise actually, it's triangular. And the only reason we could tell that, because it was a dark night, was it was basically blocking out the sky, so you couldn't see the stars because of the shape of this thing. And it had two bright lights on each back corner, nothing in the middle, nothing at the front, just on each back corner. And it was about the size, it was difficult to tell, but it was about the size of half a football pitch. and it was cruising at about, I don't know how slow, because if I'd have carried on driving at 30, 40 miles an hour, I would have left it well behind. It was literally just cruising really slowly, and what scared us the most was the silence. So you can hear a plane at 20,000 feet. You can hear a police helicopter a few miles away. We could not hear a single thing. And this road is a busy road. Just put the country pubs up and down it, and people are often travelling even at 9:45 or whatever it was that we were there. You would always have people coming up and down the road. Interestingly, we had no one. And it was almost like it was just us and this thing. And I turned my engine off. We had the hazards. My window was down, and we couldn't hear a thing. And I'm not ashamed to admit that we both sat there crying our eyes out. Don't know why. To this day, nothing really happened, nothing untoward that should have made us cry. But I think it was this kind of the unknowing of what the hell is this thing that's right there. You can't hear anything. I don't know what it is, and it was petrifying. And so eventually it kind of got behind the trees. We lost it, and we made our way back home. It was like a 5-minute journey to get home. By the time we got home, we were still visibly shaken up, and my mum asked, what's the matter, what's happened? And I told them. Now, my brother's not really into this kind of thing. It's not his bag. So when I told them, I got this look from my mum as if to say, yeah, whatever. And my brother said, no, I'm telling you now. We've just seen this thing, and we don't know what the hell it was, but we've just seen it. So that was great for me, because I had the backup of my brother, and as soon as he told my mum, you could see her kind of go, oh right, okay, well, maybe there was something then. So I reported this obviously the next day, and I went to a guy called Antonio Paris, who was I don't know if he's still going, but he was an investigator from the US. He put me in touch with a guy called Lawrence McNeil, who operates in Scotland. He's the UK investigator. And we then spent the next month or so back and forth over Skype, interviewing, taking drawings from me and my brother, basically making a case for this thing. And when we talk about synchronicity, coincidence and things like that, there was the one evening where I said to this guy, I said, look, I can't hang around because I've got to go out. I've got tickets for a lecture. And he said, well, that's fine. I've got to go out as well. We'll make it quick. After about 15, 20 minutes, we were wrapping it up. And I said, so where is it you're going? Anywhere nice? And he said, I'm going to watch a lecture on 9/11. And I said, oh, I'm going to watch a lecture on 9/11. I mean, this guy lives in Scotland. And I said, that's interesting. What a coincidence. I said, where is it? He said, well, actually, my sister's married to a guy from Birmingham, so we're going to Birmingham UFO group to watch this lecture. And I said, wow, yeah, that was my reaction. So less than 1 hour later, I was stood at the bar with this guy having a pint. And I was, even now I'm speechless about how that could have happened. And to me, that's the universe kind of telling you, right, you're on the right path. Yeah. Now, BUFOG have played a big part for me, because I then realised, I've got this group just around the corner. So I used to go there, watch speakers. I've become really good friends with the chairman, and that's where I gave my first presentation on the paranormal, and it's kind of boosted me to where I am now. So it's just how this synchronicity, time after time after time, plays a part in pushing you down this path. And every time you question, am I doing the right thing? Should I maybe veer off a little bit? It goes, oh, no, stay where you are, keep doing what you're doing. And I don't know if you've ever experienced anything like this, but every time it happens, I just kind of, look up to the sky and just think, wow, thanks. Thanks for that. And I know that I'm doing the right thing.
Most definitely. And I can appreciate that synchronicity in life. And, not only am I an author, but I work as a publicist with many other authors. And every time I get introduced to a new author, it's like they have the experience or the guidance to help me with the next phase of my life. And we have more than just a working relationship. They actually become a huge part of my life. They give me advice. One of them was telling me about spirit attachments, and I had my own spirit attachment, which I'll talk about at a later date. And it's remarkable. And all these little things happen in life. It just makes you think maybe we are being guided by some huge unseen force. And it goes back to what you were saying earlier at the start of the interview about when we are children, everything is magical. Our power of suggestion is off the chart. We believe in magic and Star Wars and the Tooth Fairy and Father Christmas. And then you fill or replace all of that with jobs, money, relationships, health, blah, blah, blah. And we forget that there is almost this mystical energy, this force perhaps guiding us. We don't know where it comes from. We can only speculate. But in regards to the UFO, did other people see the UFO? Did anybody get any evidence or pictures or?
No, so that's the aspect that really disappointed me. So obviously the first thing I did in the morning, besides reporting it, was to look on the news sites to see if anyone had seen it, because where it was right over the farmhouses. There were a collection of houses along this road, and I thought someone has to see this thing. The lights were so bright, it was such a big craft, but it was silent. And the only thing I could find was about 15 years ago I come from an area called Dudley, and there was a triangular craft spotted across Dudley by hundreds of people, and it was imaginatively nicknamed the Dudley Dorito.
The Dudley Dorito, yes. Yeah,
so it was a triangular craft, and that was the closest thing I could find to what we saw. Now, I think this thing had a light in the middle, so it was slightly different, but nobody else that I know of, despite looking into it, saw the same thing that we saw on that night. And I've never said that it's aliens. I've never admitted that it's aliens, because I don't know. It could be some government craft that I'm not aware of. It could be a reverse engineered craft. I never admit that it was aliens, but whatever it was, by the very definition, it was an unidentified flying object. So it was a UFO. Unfortunately, people think, oh, you believe in aliens then, and they accredit the word UFO with aliens, but not so. If you see something in the sky and you don't know what it is an unidentified flying object. And that's what we saw. And I don't know what it was. I don't know where it went. I've never seen one since. But yeah, the Dudley Dorito.
Well, this is going to blow your mind, because this is exactly what we've been talking about. One of the guests on this very podcast, who I will hook you up with as soon as we're done, right? His name is David J. Moore, and he wrote a book called Evolutionary Metaphors. As you were talking, I made a little note, right? And then you started talking about the Dudley Dorito. David saw it, and it had such a profound effect on him, a philosophy lecturer, that he wrote a book about it and has spent his life realizing and researching that the UFO mythology has always been here. It's always been with us. And we present this through our TV shows, through our radio shows, through our comics, through our video games, because we know they're there, and we are just trying to get to that level of understanding them. And it was fascinating. As soon as you said the Dudley Dorito, I was like, oh my gosh. So what I'm going to do after the show, I'm going to connect you to David J. Moore, and I think you guys need to talk, because he is from Dudley.
Well, again, there we go. To the listeners, that's synchronicity for you. That's how it works. It keeps pushing you onwards down the path.
You can listen to this interview with Kieran now, and then later you can listen to the one with David J. Moore, and you'll get like a more inclusive story. You'll get more information on that. We will be right back after these important messages.
I've Never Met a Dead Person I Didn't Like is the extraordinary travels of a young, alone, and broke psychic in the highly anticipated new book from internationally renowned psychic, medium, medical intuitive, and best-selling author Sherry Dillard. Critics have described I've Never Met a Dead Person I Didn't Like as an engrossing memoir, an empowering story of how a broken girl came to accept her psychic gift, a refreshing and fun read. I've Never Met a Dead Person I Didn't Like is available through Amazon, Kindle, Barnes & Noble, and wherever books are sold.
How far would you go to protect the children in your care? Nyla's Babies is the terrifying, chilling book from Jack Simonsen, in which a young nanny battles an ancient demon for the souls of the twin babies in her care. Critics have heralded Nyla's Babies as an impressive and vivid imagined story, compelling and devilishly spooky, shocking and haunting. Nyla's Babies is available on Amazon, Kindle, or wherever books are sold. Visit cosmicegg-books.com for more on Nyla's Babies.
Sixth Books will take you to other worlds, haunt you, open your mind, and push you far beyond the veil of the unknown. Sixth Books is a leading publisher of books on the body, mind, and spirit, the paranormal, consciousness, ancient wisdom, and the afterlife. Explore today, learn today, open your mind today, read today. Visit sixth-books.com today. The world as you know it is about to change.
Do you wish for more paranormal and spiritual content? The Paranormal Chronicles magazine is a free digital magazine crammed with the very best in paranormal and spiritual articles and features. No sign-up, no subscription, just free reading and knowledge for you. Read today at www.theparanormalchronicles.com/magazine.
Hi there, my name is Claire Waters and I would like to invite you on an incredible journey. I have written a book based on my personal experiences called Raising Faith, a true story of raising a child's psychic medium. It's my family's extraordinary experiences with our young daughter's ability to communicate with spirits and the inspirational lessons learned on our journey. Raising Faith is currently available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle and wherever books are sold. Join me on this beautiful and incredible adventure. For more information on Raising Faith, visit my website, raisingfaith.co.uk, or my Facebook page, Raising Faith Book. See you there.
The international chart-topping, haunted horror of Haverfordwest has been described as terrifyingly real, a must-read, shocking and chilling brilliance, genuinely worrying, utterly frightening. Don't read before bed. Described as one of the spookiest writers out there, bestselling author G.L. Davies presents Haunted Horror of Haverfordwest, the true paranormal account that is shocking the world. Dare you enter? Dare you read? Haunted Horror of Haverfordwest is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, and wherever books are sold. Pray you never have to live there.
Going forward a little bit, now you believe that paranormal investigating is becoming an expensive hobby thanks to groups inflating prices and in turn locations increasing their prices too. Do you believe this is now leading to trickery and fakery in an effort to keep people spending their hard-earned money on ghost hunting adventures and investigations?
I don't think it's to keep them spending their hard-earned money. I think it's to keep the people involved earning money.
Okay.
And I think there is a difference. But to talk about how, it's becoming expensive. So when I got back into this field, so after the UFO incident and things like that, I got back into this. I started rewatching programs such as Ghost Hunters International and all that stuff. So my wife brought me a birthday present to go on a ghost hunt, and it was at Dudley Castle. So we went to Dudley Castle and had this ghost hunt with a group. I'm not going to name them, but they're one of the big groups that are operating around the country. And I was really excited, never been on one before. Turned up, didn't know what to expect, and I left extremely disappointed. And throughout the whole night, all that was happening was they had a resident medium with them. Now, I'm a big believer in mediums. I've got friends with the ability. And I'm not saying that this person was a fake or a sham or anything like that. But what she did do, and she did it very well, was she made you experience things on that night. She told you how to feel. She pointed you in the right direction. She told you what to see. She made sure you had a good time. And what I noticed was the people that were running the event were also doing the same thing. Creating noises where there weren't noise. And I don't mean they were making the noise, but they were just saying, did anyone hear that? And, there was nothing. There was nothing to be heard. Now, I also understand that people can hear things and that other people can't. I understand that concept. But I truly believe that there was nothing really happening. And we had a few things happen and a few things that made me kind of, go, wow, that was interesting. But on the whole, nothing really happened. So I left a little bit disappointed. When I found out how much my wife had paid, I felt a little bit more disappointed.
Yeah.
But I'd got the bug. I wanted to go again. So I chose a different group. We paid, the wife didn't come. She's not really into this kind of thing. So I went along and I left feeling exactly the same. And this happened 4 or 5 times before I finally found a group who did it how I wanted them to do it, and that was to let you experience the night, not to kind of subconsciously plant things into your head and how to feel and what to see. They let you experience it. They made notes of everything that you said. If you said, I feel that my heart is racing or I feel like my leg's hurting, they made notes. And then at the end of the evening, we had a big sit down and they said to you, right, remember when your leg was hurting there? Well, there was a guy who got crushed, so you could have been picking up on that. Yeah. And remember when you said this was happening there? Well, it could be related to this. And that was, in my mind, that's the right way to do it. So I went back with them, and that's who I'm part of now. So they eventually asked me I think they basically said, look, you're coming to basically every event, so you might as well be part of the team. And so they took me on as part of their team, and as they say, the rest is history. But what it did was it opened my eyes to how the two ways of paranormal investigating. There's the way that we did it, and there was the way that these other groups were doing it. And I think it all stems from TV programs. And so if we look at TV programs, let's take Most Haunted, the most famous one. I used to watch this when I was 10, 11 years old. Absolutely loved it. Thought it was brilliant. It was entertaining. And that's all it was. It was entertaining. Now, there are video after video on YouTube of these groups, such as Ghost Hunters and Most Haunted, faking things and making things happen, kicking buckets over, pulling on their own hoods, things like that. And that's what they have to do, in my opinion, in order to keep their viewing figures up.
Yeah.
So if they have a TV program, people watch these programs, they're 45 minutes long, and there's about 20 to 25 minutes worth of actual investigating going on, because the first 10 minutes or so they tell you about the location, the last 10 minutes or so they talk about what they found, and you have this middle bit of about 20 minutes or whatever where they're actually investigating. Now, they go to locations like we do, and they do 6 or 7 hour hunts. And so what they're condensing into these 20-minute episodes is 6 to 7 hours worth of footage. So when people watch it, they get this impression, wow, that was active all night. It was constant. No, it wasn't. They've condensed 6 or 7 hours of stuff into 20 minutes. They could make the most boringest of nights seem really active. But if nothing happens and they have to make something happen, then they have to do so. Because if I watch a program and I think, that was rubbish, I'm not going to watch that again, and the viewing figures drop, then they're out of a job. The producers are out of a job. The network don't have their Star TV program anymore. So they have to rely on keeping the viewers entertained. And the second that keeping people entertained becomes the forefront of their focus, and it takes the place of actually doing research and understanding that part of ghost hunting is trying not to fall asleep at 1 o'clock in the morning, and, making sure your belly doesn't rumble at 2 o'clock in the morning and disturb anyone else. That's what ghost hunting is. And as soon as you replace that with having to make sure that people are entertained and having to fake things, then in my opinion, you lose all reliability as an investigator. And I'm not saying that they don't start out with the best of intentions. I believe they all do. But the second that these producers and that these TV shows get their hands on them, it all becomes about entertainment. Now, slightly off topic, but Ron, we interviewed Ron on our podcast, and he told us about how in Finding Bigfoot, the paradigm of the program by their producers was you can't find Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Because if you find Bigfoot, we don't have a program anymore. And that's basically what it is. It's slightly different, but what I'm trying to get across is how these producers control what is shown and what isn't shown on these TV shows. Now, unfortunately, what that's done is it's trickled down into the amateur groups, because these guys that come on our investigations come and they expect a Most Haunted style investigation. So they expect constant activity. And if someone hasn't been possessed in the first 10 minutes, or if they haven't seen a glass explode on the table after half hour, they're bored and they want to go home. And we've actually had people ask, can we go home? Because, this isn't what we expected. And it's because they've watched these TV programs. And, they're using equipment that they don't know why they're using it, what they're using it for, because they've seen Yvette Fielding use it on TV. They just go, oh, she's using it, so I'll go and spend £50 on it and don't really know what it is, but I'll just wave it around and shout at someone and ask them to come and talk to me. And they're just copying what's happening on TV. So that's had a negative impact. But it's also had a negative impact on these big groups that are dominating the market now, because they're acting in a similar way. So they will charge guests to go with them to investigations, 60, 70, 80 pounds to go on some of these investigations. And we've done places that these groups do. So we know how much to pay. We know how much these locations charge. So we know how much we would charge our guests. And it's only ever the amount to cover the venue. And if ever we have more guests come and we make a profit, then it just pays for our next event and so on. But these groups are charging so much, to make a profit because they're a business. What it means is they have to make sure that their guests are entertained. Because if you forked out 70 or 80 pounds to go on an investigation and nothing happens, you're going to leave a bad review on TripAdvisor. You're going to tell all your mates not to come again. You're going to leave a comment on Facebook. And they're going to lose business. They lose business, they lose their jobs, they don't make money anymore. So just like the TV programs are reliant on viewers, these guys are reliant on repeat guests. And if they don't get repeat guests, they lose their jobs. So again, when putting that focus in front of actual research, if that happens, you lose your reliability, you lose your credibility.
Yeah.
And that's happening across the country. But what it's doing is it means smaller groups like myself, and I'm sure you're aware of other groups, really on the ground level, the grassroots, they're finding it more and more difficult to get into places because these places are upping their prices because these groups can afford to pay these inflated prices. And it means that we can't go into these places anymore. Places we used to do regularly. There's a place called Drakelow Tunnels, and they used to charge, I think it was about, I'll say it, they used to charge about £300. Most Haunted went down there. They now charge £750.
Yeah.
How can someone like us afford that now without putting the prices of the guests up? We can't, so we just don't go anymore. And it's a crying shame. And to give an example of how Most Haunted do it, I got married in a place called Hayden Hill House, and it's a Victorian house in the middle of a park. And when I got there, shouldn't have really, but it was about half hour before I said I do, I pulled a woman to one side and said, "Do you do ghost hunts here?" And she said, "Oh God, no, categorically not. That's not something we would do." And I said, "All right, fine, fair enough." About 3 weeks later, I got back, about 3 weeks after my honeymoon, I turned the TV on, I put Really on to watch Most Haunted. Guess where they are? They're at Hayden Hill House, at this place that categorically does not do ghost investigations. So you have to think, how much money did they throw at them to enable them to go and do it?
Yeah. And it's a promotion as well. It's a publicity.
Absolutely.
For the venue.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what's happening. And that's what made me start, have the idea of writing my book, an introduction to paranormal investigation, because it talked about the equipment that was being used. I wanted people to actually understand what it was, why we use it, whether it was good or bad, in my opinion. But I also wanted them to understand that ghost hunting isn't this thing that you see on TV. It isn't this thing that you'll get when you go with these big franchised corporate groups. It's nothing like that. As I say, it's all about trying not to fall asleep. It's all about hearing one footstep out of 4 investigations, and even that might have been someone just going to the toilet. That's what ghost hunting is. And I wanted to get that across to people because I'm scared for the future of the field, and I'm scared that these people that have been watching Most Haunted, and as good as it was that it inspired people to go out and actually do stuff, I feel like it did it in the wrong way. And I'm scared that these people are going to be the future generation of ghost hunting, and we're probably going to end up going backwards as an investigative field instead of going forward.
Oh yeah, here on that. Nicely said, Kieran. I remember the first 2 or 3 series of Most Haunted, and it was like, wow, this is great. And very little happened, and that's what made it good. Because when something did happen, it was special. It meant something, whether it was a feeling, whether it was an orb-like apparition or an orb-like activity or anything that was happening became very special. And it's like, wow, you just get goosebumps. Yep. And then, as you said, it became more and more about entertainment, which is fine because that's all about the viewers, the sponsors, the viewers. That's what keeps the series ticking. And before you knew it, people were being pulled downstairs. And it became a regular occurrence that production staff, producers, former members of the team were coming out and saying, "You know what, guys, we faked it. We did this, we did that." And it became a bit of a joke in a lot of respects. It was like, oh, what are they going to do now? I'm a huge wrestling fan, but some people said that Most Haunted was more fake than professional wrestling, right? And whereas those first couple of series, it was fantastic, and it inspired me, it motivated me, like a lot of people listening. But unfortunately, anybody associated with Most Haunted or uses that moniker to try and get themselves over, to try and influence people, to try and build their star, it doesn't have that weight anymore. If you're associated with Most Haunted, you're not necessarily going to have that credibility, because if you type in Most Haunted, you will get 12 to 24 stories about how they fake stuff. It's very rare you'll ever see something where they had actual footage or actual evidence. And the sad thing is, right, because I do appreciate how hard that team worked and what they were trying to do in terms of entertainment value, if they got genuine paranormal footage logged and recorded, no one is going to believe them.
No, not anymore.
Not anymore.
And that's the thing I often say to people. If you're with a partner, you're married to someone, if they cheat on you or lie to you, would you ever trust them again? No. Yet Most Haunted, they run events across the country every weekend, and hundreds of people go with them. And I often think, but why? Once bitten, twice shy. Surely you must be in the back of your mind. Are they faking some of this stuff?
But again, it's the entertainment factor. You're meeting people.
That's what it is. They're relying on the
on
fact
TV.
Yeah.
It's a brand. It's a famous brand. It's a touring company and TV show. And you can go to a place and a venue and recognize people and have a few thrills and scares. And I don't think anyone necessarily goes there expecting paranormal scientific research. It's just for, it's for shits and giggles. Pardon my French. Investigators come to me and they think that an investigation is going out with a night vision camera shouting, show yourself.
Yeah.
And I don't do investigations anymore. I've never charged for an investigation. That's no reflection on anyone who does. I never needed to. The money I had for my books, I was able to pay for some locations and invite people along for the experience as a collective to do some research, to see what we could come up with. It wasn't about a commercial thing. It was about a study. And I went on an investigation in 2002, 2003. I paid £40. Me and a friend went, and I caught one of the team throwing a chair at us in the dark.
Oh, wow.
I filmed it on night vision.
That is like wrestling.
And I said to him, what are you doing? And he was stunned. He was absolutely stunned. And he said to me, I must have been possessed by a mischievous witch. And I had a chat, and it was the same formula as you said. It was a psychic medium, and they had this like a pattern of how they do stuff.
Yeah.
And I also caught a girl flicking stones at the window and stuff. So I had a chat with him at the end. I said, look, guys, I'm not going to call you out on this in terms of, I'm not going to expose you. But why? Why throw a chair at us? Why flick stones? Why do this? And the guy said, and this is exactly what you said. He said, because it would be boring. Nothing would happen. We can't make stuff happen. And he said, stuff does happen, but we can't guarantee it will. So we need people to talk about what's happening. And I thought, fair dues. But just say, investigations are boring. You're there, as you said, you're trying to stay awake. You feel ill from the energy drink. Someone's stomach goes, or somebody makes a weird noise. And you're like, oh my God, what's that? And you've got such a heightened awareness. The power of suggestion is running wild. Everything is a ghost. Everything is paranormal. And I don't do it anymore. I just do the one-to-ones. Very fascinating insight you have there, and I totally agree with that. Now, you have a theory that spirits and other paranormal entities, such as Bigfoot and aliens, are all operating on different frequencies outside of the visible light that as humans can't access. Could you share more to us about how this works?
This is something that I've been bandying around for a while, and it's not something I came up with. It's not an original concept, really. I've just kind of taken it and focused it on my particular research, which is paranormal. And when I began to look into the nature of reality and how we perceive the world that's around us and what the world actually is, I did a bit of research, and it became apparent that, as a human species, we see very little of what's actually around us. So what we call visible light, which is a small sliver of the light spectrum, equates to roughly 0.05%. So we can, just let that sink in, we can see 0.05% of the light spectrum. And that's what we call visible light. Now, either side of us, we have infrared, we have ultraviolet, we have X-ray, we have microwave, etc. That's what equates for the rest of the 99.95%. So what's existing in that 99.95% that we can't see or interact with? Yeah. And that got me thinking, is it possible that that's where this paranormal phenomena is existing, outside of our frequency range, so to speak? And I started to come up, I remember trying to explain this to people, and they were looking at me like I was talking gobbledygook. They didn't have a clue what I was saying. So I tried to come up with an analogy to kind of not dumb it down, because that's not very nice, but just to try and explain it easier.
Yeah.
And I came up with a radio analogy. So if you're listening to Radio 1, it doesn't mean that Radio 2 doesn't exist. It's just that your radio, or for the benefit of this, our brain, isn't tuned into Radio 2. It's still there, it's in the ether, it's floating around you. It's literally just waiting for you to turn the dial, tune into that frequency, and then you can listen to it. Once you do that, that doesn't mean that Radio 1 no longer exists. It's still there, you're just not tuning into it again. Now, what happens to quite frequently is if you're driving down the road in the car, you're listening to the radio, and you might get two radio stations intermingle with each other. There's a mistake, crossed frequencies, you hear two songs at once, and then it fixes itself and you go back to listening to the radio station you were before. Now, I think that that's what happens when people see a ghost, or when people see a Bigfoot, or when people see a UFO. I think what's happening is the frequencies are crossing paths, just as we spoke of earlier with the timelines. The frequencies are crossing paths, and for the briefest of seconds, you're tuning into to both stations at the same time. And I think that that's what mediums can do. I think mediums have the ability to, almost like a digital radio, they can tune into anything they want, and they can listen to 2 or 3 songs at the same time. And what I think is the case is it's almost like a block of flats. So if we're living on one floor, you'll have Bigfoot that lives above you, you'll have the ghosts that are living below you, you have aliens on the top floor somewhere, and you know that they're there because you hear them moving around every now and then. They're playing the music a bit too loud, they're shuffling the furniture around. You catch a glimpse of them in the elevator, you cross paths in the corridor, but ultimately you can't interact with them because they're living on a different floor to you. And that's what's happening here. So they're living on their own frequency wavelength and are outside of our perception. Now, as a consciousness, which we all are, we're just collective consciousness. As consciousness, we can experience this, but the biological vessel with which our consciousness is trapped within, which is what enables us to experience this 5-sense reality, it prevents our consciousness from experiencing these frequencies because our eyes can only see to a certain frequency, our ears can only hear to a certain frequency. Therefore, it's preventing our consciousness from truly experiencing the world as it really is. And I think when we are talking to a ghost or a spirit, what we are talking to is a point of attention, a consciousness that is able to flip between frequencies because it doesn't have the constraints of a biological vessel.
Yeah.
So, I'm called Kieran, you're called Gavin, but what we look at in the mirror, that's not Kieran, that's not Gavin, that's just a biological vessel. The consciousness inside you is Kieran.
Yeah.
And people often get bogged down with, no, I need to look like this, and I need to be, no, forget that. It's what's inside, it's the consciousness, call it consciousness, a spirit, a soul, whatever. It's the same thing. And I think once we're free of this biological vessel, I think we can move between frequencies and we can interact with all of these phenomena. So when people say, Bigfoot walked behind a tree, well, he didn't come out the other side. Well, I think he did come out the other side. But by that point, the frequencies had fixed themselves and you were no longer tuned into it. So he was there. When people say a UFO was in the sky, it just vanished before my eyes. It didn't vanish. The frequency that's within your brain, the manipulation within your brain corrected itself. And you were back to seeing what your biological vessel allows you to see. And if that's the case, then that would mean that aliens aren't interplanetary, but they're actually interdimensional. But that's a completely different show to talk about. So it got me thinking about this, and I got thinking about, where are things existing, and what can I do to investigate this? How can I begin to look into this? And people are already doing it. People are using things such as infrared cameras because it allows you to see into that field. People are using ultraviolet torches because it allows you to see, if you've got an ultraviolet torch, just please don't put it in your kitchen because your wife will lose her mind at the stains that she couldn't see before that she can now see. But it just goes to show, those things are always there. That stain is always on your kitchen counter, but you just can't see it because your eyes cannot see it. So I started looking at how can we do things. So one experiment we did was we flooded this room with EMF. We had a couple of EMF generators, and we high EMF, low EMF, and we flooded this room with EMF. And we had a radio scanner, so we were every now and then we were tuning into these different frequencies to see if we could pick anything up. And we had the classic EMF meter, and we had a REM pod. And nothing happened. It was, as we spoke of, it was really boring. 15-20 minutes had passed and I was ready to just, call it quits, move on. So I went and turned everything off, turned all the emitters off, and as we were getting ready to leave, the EMF meter shot right up to red. The REM pod started going absolutely crazy, and you could almost feel this energy in the room all of a sudden. And I think what happened was we were blocking this particular spirit or spirits from interacting with us because we were flooding the room with frequencies that they couldn't interact on. And the second we'd emptied the room of these frequencies, it's almost like they could get through the door now and they could come and talk to us on their own terms, on their own frequency. And it was just interesting that the second we emptied the room of frequencies, it started to interact with us. And that kind of made me think, oh, maybe I'm on the right path here. Maybe this is correct. Another incident was we were in a room and we heard a growl, and the team next door to us were recording an EVP, and they recorded someone saying hello. And I remember thinking, that's interesting. And we ran the times, and it turns out that the growl that we'd heard happened at the same time that they'd heard or recorded hello. So what happened there was the recording, which can pick up things that the human ear can't hear, outside of our range, had picked up that growl, deciphered it, decoded it, and made it into the word hello. The human ear, which couldn't tune into those frequencies, could only hear a growl. Because ultimately, that's what I'm doing now. When I talk to you, I'm basically just barking at you. It's just a bunch of vibrational noise that my vocal cords are making. It's just that your brain has been manipulated into decoding those vibrational frequencies into words. So you hear language. What we heard there was the very raw, the very lowest form of that vibration, and I think that was the growl. Now, we thought it was evil. It didn't sound very nice. It sounded quite animalistic, and we were a little bit scared. But when you listen to the hello on the recording, it's as innocent as you like. It's a hello, and it's like, wow. So that's actually what it was saying, and therefore it made me think we need to be careful when we're hearing things. Are we actually hearing what they're trying to say, what they're trying to communicate with us? When we see things, is that actually what they're trying to show us? Or is the constraints of our biological vessel preventing us from seeing or hearing what they actually want us to see or hear? And that's what's forced me down this route of the certain techniques that we're doing and my theory and things like that. So it's quite deep, and we could probably have a lengthy discussion on it. It's certainly interesting, and it's certainly a different way of looking at paranormal investigating.
Of course, it's fascinating, and there's a rumour out there, and I haven't got a lot of evidence to cement this. Maybe you have, but it was brought to me by another investigator that there's a device that can actually, like a thermal imager, but a device that can actually see broadband, or as they call it in America, Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
And it can actually show this, how it looks, what the waves of the broadband, what the Wi-Fi look like.
Yeah.
And one of the people using this piece of kit claims that within the Wi-Fi, within the broadband waves, there's solid shapes moving.
I could believe that, because I've not heard of this device, by the way. I'm going to have to go look at that. That's basically what I described, that, they're operating on all these frequencies. But when you look at how we're being bombarded with things such as 3G, 4G, 5G, I know you mentioned about that tower that was built near your house and things like that. All these things are manipulating our mind and bombarding our bodies. And it's preventing us from being able to tune into the natural frequencies that are around us. Earth, for example, vibrates at its own natural frequency. But we're almost being bombarded with all these other unnatural frequencies, such as EMF from Wi-Fi, mobile phones, charging your phone next to you, reading iPads in bed, things like that. They're all having a negative effect on us, and they're preventing us from tuning into natural frequencies, which is where I believe these spirits and other paranormal phenomena are operating. And one thing that I've posed lately is that it's possible that what we're seeing when we see a UFO or a Bigfoot or a ghost or anything that's paranormal, I believe that we're all seeing the same phenomena. So if you were to strip away the veil of the world as we see it and get right down to the coding of the universe, what we're seeing when we see these paranormal phenomena is the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. However, each individual is manifesting it in their own way. So we're basically thought processing it and making it a ghost, or we're processing it and making it a Bigfoot. Because isn't it interesting that anyone that's religious will always see the Virgin Mary, always. And if you want to go out and look for Bigfoot, you will always see a Bigfoot. And most ghost hunters have always seen a ghost. And I think that they are seeing these things, but what they're seeing is exactly the same as each other, but they're just manifesting it in their own way. And isn't that interesting?
That is fascinating. You could lead us down so many rabbit holes, Kieran. It's amazing. Just before we go into the next question, I just want to say to everyone, if this is your first time listening to Kieran Woodhouse, okay, guess what? I got a wonderful surprise for you. Not only does he have a book, which is one of the best ghost hunting books out there. It's called An Introduction to Paranormal Investigation by Kieran Woodhouse. It's on Kindle. It's available on Amazon, and is a fantastic book. You will learn so much from reading this, right? But not only that, This gentleman, right, we've gone down the rabbit hole a little bit tonight. He's got his own podcast as well, the Paranormal Paradigm Podcast. So after this interview, go and check out Kieran's podcast. If you love his information, the way he thinks, the way he investigates, there is so much that Kieran has presented. And this guy, I'm telling you now, I'm calling it now, Kieran, he's doing a lot of hard work. He will be Britain's #1 paranormal investigator. This is the guy to watch. This is the guy to learn from. This guy is going places. So Kieran, what equipment do you use on investigations, and what evidence have you caught using them other than the ones we spoke about earlier? Also, you said that you might have some skepticism towards some pieces of equipment or techniques. Could you give us a bit more insight into that?
My skepticism kind of travels throughout the whole thing. So I quite often, when I'm giving presentations, I quite often have people interrupt me and say, do you actually believe in ghosts? You know, because I come across as quite skeptical. And of course I do. You know, I've had experiences that I can't explain. But what I do is I go to every single investigation with the notion of disproving ghosts. Because if you go with the intention of proving ghosts, you will, every single time. Because every noise you hear, that's a ghost. Every shadow you see, that's a ghost. How easy is it to do that? If you go with the notion of disproving it, you're going to look at it from a more logical point of view, from a more scientific point of view. And therefore, if you see a shadow, you're going to try and debunk it. And 99.9% of the time, you can. Your car's driven past the window and it's cast a shadow. Or, you know, as we mentioned earlier, someone's belly was grumbling, that's what you heard. But there is the 0.01% time where you will catch something. You will get an EVP. You will get a shadow. You will be touched. You will hear a voice. And it's that percentage, tiny percentage of time that keeps you going back for more, because now you want to hear 2 footsteps, you want to see 2 shadows, and it's very addictive and it keeps you going back. And I often say, when we talk about equipment, the best piece of equipment you can use is the human body, because you can trust yourself. All these pieces of equipment that we use, they're battery operated, they're influenced by mobile phones, they can be influenced by faulty fuse boxes, by faulty wiring, things like that. You know yourself, you know what you've seen, you know what you haven't seen. You can lie to yourself, you can tell yourself that you saw something that you didn't, but deep down you know that you're lying. And therefore the only thing that you can really truly trust is yourself. And that's what makes ghost hunting such a personal experience. I've been stood in a room with a guy next to me who was sworn blind that he's seeing a shadow right in front of him moving past the doorway. I'm stood next to him, not seeing a thing, can't see anything. Does that mean he's lying? Absolutely not. It means he's having an experience that I'm not. Now, if he is lying, only he knows that, and he has to sleep with that. That's his decision. But if he's telling the truth, and most of the time I think these people are, I think they are experiencing these things, if they're telling the truth, it just means that they're able to tune into a particular frequency that I can't at that moment in time. And I think that's possible. For example, my wife doesn't have a digital radio in her car, so she can't listen to the radio stations that I can listen to, just to simplify it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's happening. They're seeing something. Just because I can't see it, and I've been there when this has happened, people will call them a liar. They'll rubbish them. It's all rubbish. You're talking rubbish. There's nothing there. And sometimes you can see the hurt on these people's faces. I hate that, because it's such a personal experience, is ghost hunting. And I think sometimes when you go with these groups, or when you use certain pieces of equipment, it can really take away from that. It can take the personal away from it. It can strip it right down, and sometimes it becomes too methodical. It becomes too laborious of a chore almost. So when you ask what equipment we use the ones that everybody else uses, the EMF meter. Now, an EMF meter, a K2 meter, was originally used for faulty wiring in a house, for leaky microwaves, for things like that, until someone someday said, oh, I think we could use this to detect ghosts. And people see Yvette Fielding using it, so they use it. They go out, they buy it at an inflated price now. I mean, you could get these things like a tenner back in the day.
Yeah.
I saw one on Amazon for £45 because it has ghost hunting on the back of it. And this is what's happened. We talk about the groups that have increased prices. It happens with equipment as well. So a REM pod, or a radiating electromagnetism pod, is similar to a K2 meter, but instead of detecting fluctuations in the surrounding EMF, it produces its own EMF and detects any disturbances within that. And that's why I love it, because it can be trusted a little bit more than an EMF meter. Now, you've heard of the theremin, the instrument that people used to play where they could move their hand close to it and it would make a noise.
very good for science fiction movies.
Yeah, that's the one. If anyone doesn't know what a REM pod is, that is essentially what this is. So it produces its own EMF field, and if you disturb that field, it makes a noise. And the closer you get to the antenna, the louder it gets. And it's a great piece of equipment. I absolutely love it. I mean, we've had several in a room lined up, and each one has gone off in turn as if something was walking up the room past these, these pieces of equipment. And it's when you can do that, it kind of makes you think, actually, maybe there was something going on there. Again, unfortunately, they cost quite a lot of money. If you want a good one, you're probably talking in excess of £100, £200 for one of these things. So they're not cheap, but they are a good piece of equipment. We use basic things such as laser grid pens. So it's a laser pen with a cap on the end that splits the laser into multiple dots. You shine it on a large flat surface like a wall, and it allows you to see shadows moving across the room a lot easier. So we tend to set a camera up, film it for an hour while we go away and do other things. We review the footage, and the things you see are phenomenal. You can see human-shaped shadows moving through the grid pen, and it just enables you to see shadows a little bit more. So that's a good piece of equipment. And there are numerous pieces of equipment that people will be familiar with to use. To this day, I still maintain that the best piece is the human body.
Yeah, most definitely. It'd be great if we could have a chip in our brain that could record what we're seeing, what we're feeling, and what we're hearing.
I think Google will probably be there soon.
Here we go. Sign me up for that. I'm not entirely sure people would want to see what I see and what I think, and especially after writing about like ghost sex or violation, some very dark things in my mind. I think that anybody out there, people out there, if you're in a paranormal team or you're looking to start up a team, I'd certainly read an introduction to paranormal investigation, because it just gives you the tools and the tips and the advice to just go out there and make it more rewarding for yourself. Because I know from personal experience, from people I speak to, if you just go out with a night vision camera, shout and show yourself, it's just going to be a dull experience. And after an hour or two, you're just going to go home, right? If you take on board what Kieran is saying, buy his book, An Introduction to Paranormal Investigation, read through it based on his experiences, his research, and slowly but surely start to build up your toolbox with your paranormal kit and methodology. You will find this ultimately more rewarding. And guess what? You might capture some evidence that makes a difference to the paranormal field. An Introduction to Paranormal Investigation, it's perfect. Whether you've been in the field for 20 years, you might learn something new. But if you're thinking of starting up, this is a great book. It will get you motivated to be the very best paranormal investigator you can. One of the things that really, really interested me was, how can what people eat and drink prior to or on an investigation affect their perception? And what are they seeing and feeling? Because I know I used to just tank up on energy drinks, and I was seeing all kinds of berserk stuff.
Well, the first thing I would say is never ever eat a curry before an investigation. That is a big, from personal experience, that is a big no-no. But it's really, energy drinks are one of the worst things that you can choose to consume. What I tend to do is, anybody that knows me, I am absolutely not a monk. I don't live a healthy lifestyle, really. I drink, I eat what I want, and things like that. But I tend to, whenever there's an investigation coming up, I'll have a 24-hour period where I try and watch what I eat and watch what I consume in terms of drink. And the reason is because it can have a huge impact on how you feel and how you perceive things. So if you down 2 or 3 Red Bulls, and I see people do this all the time, they come on an investigation, they think, I'm going to be up till 3 or 4 in the morning, I need to stay awake. So they start downing these Red Bulls. What they do is they put you onto a massive high, and then they put you onto a massive low really quick. And what they can do is it can give you heart palpitations, so your heart begins to race. They can give you migraines. They can give people the sweats, people headaches, all this kind of thing. And what people will do is they will accredit that to paranormal. Yeah. So someone will go, my heart's racing, or, I feel like, something's pressing on my chest. And it's nothing to do with a ghost. It's just the fact that you've consumed 2 Red Bulls in the space of half hour, and you've probably had 1 week's allowance of caffeine in 1 hour. People also go and eat huge amounts of chocolate, sugary sweets, things like that, because they believe it's going to keep them awake. And they're right, it will keep you awake, but it will also make you feel, as you say, you felt rubbish because of the amount of energy drinks that you drank. So the perception that you're having of the location that you're investigating is completely different. Just like if you got drunk. If you got drunk and went and investigated, you'd see things that were not there, or you'd experience things that were not there. And it's because of what you've put in your body. And it's the same with food, really, and non-alcoholic drinks. I just ask people to make sure if they're coming on an investigation with us, they don't drink alcohol, they don't try not to bring energy drinks. If they do, make sure they're more herbal, more natural. There's a drink called Purdy's, which is great. I get it from Tesco.
Yeah, I know
it's
the
like,
one.
Yeah, it's like a healthy version of Red Bull. I tend to stick to that. And I do have a few sweets, I'm not going to lie. I have a couple of Chewits or a couple of Chewies, to have while I'm walking around. But that's mainly just to kind of something to focus on, while I'm sat in the dark. You really need to be careful what you eat and what you drink, because it will massively, massively impact on the night that you have. You could eat and drink a particular thing, go and do an investigation, and the next night you could go and do exactly the same investigation. But if you ate and drank something differently, I guarantee you would have a completely different night.
You tank up on energy drinks, Jaffa cakes, sweets, and by midnight, you're just wired. You might as well have just done a load of speed, and you're just wired off your nut. And then about 2 a.m, you start shivering. Yeah, you've got the shivering, you're on a come down. And diet's important. You don't want somebody farting and then going, oh, it's the spirit of a mischievous witch. And it's good, these things sound very common sense, but I bet a lot of investigators listening now, they're like, actually, I've done that and I'll be more mindful of that. So how can people contact you? Where can they read an introduction to paranormal investigation? How can they listen to more from you? Tell us where people can go and find out more about Kieran Woodhouse.
Well, the Paranormal Paradigm podcast has a Facebook page, so facebook.com/The Paranormal Paradigm. If you head over there, like the page, ask to join the group, I'll get you in. And it's really just a place where you can discuss what you want about paranormal. And we post the links to our podcast, which goes out once every 2 weeks. We interview people about ghosts, about Bigfoot, about aliens, about anything really. We're also on Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, all Anchor, all the usual podcast places. So you can reach me through there. I always encourage people to just add me on Facebook. If you come to Kieran Woodhouse, you can find me. If they want to contact me, they can email me at kieran.woodhouse@gmail.com. I absolutely encourage people to do so. I love meeting new people, talking to new people, hearing their experiences. If anyone has anywhere they'd like us to come and investigate or to come and see, please let me know. I'd be massively open to doing so. And the book, it's on Amazon. You can get it on Kindle, you can get it paperback, or contact me if you'd like a signed copy. I don't mind posting it. I've shipped copies to Finland and Germany, to America, so I don't mind posting any out to you. Just let me know what you want me to sign it with. Or I think you can get it through like Barnes & Noble and stuff like that on an ebook as well. Yeah, so I'm available anywhere really. Just come and talk to me, come and tell me your experiences, and I'd love that.
Now, we were talking earlier before we started recording about you like to do the convention circuit, you like to do talks, you like to meet groups, and what I'd like to say, and this is a personal endorsement for Kieran, there are so many paranormal investigators and they're just recycling the same information that they've done for 5-10 years. They're just trying to stay relevant. They're just trying to keep out there. They're just trying to keep getting booked on gigs, right? If Kieran is in your area, go and see him. Look at what he talked about tonight. And he's evolving and adapting these ideas. He's a new kid on the block, right? And he's taking what we know and turning it upside down and inside out. And he's coming up with some awesome stuff. I'm telling you now, Kieran will be Britain's #1 paranormal investigator very, very soon. So if you're another radio show, another podcast, you book a convention, get in touch with Kieran. Have you got any speaking engagements lined up?
Yeah, so I've got one left booked for this year so far, and that's at Bristol Truth Juice. So I'll be down in Bristol on the 27th of November. I think it's a Wednesday night. Starts at 7:30. If you go onto the Truth Juice website, you can find all the details. And then next year I've started booking, so I've got a couple already booked for next year. One of them's at East Anglia UFO, EA UFO, which is over near Cambridge way. I've got talks galore. Like I say, if anyone contacts me, I can tell them where I'm talking. Please do come and see me. I'm happy to sit and have a chat with you guys. I'm loving meeting new people. As you say, I'm quite new. I mean, my first talk can't be far off a year ago, maybe just a little less than a year ago, was my first public appearance. And since that time, my book's come out. I've done more talking engagements. I've started my podcast. So despite having a baby, I've actually, when I think about it, kind of got a lot done this year. And So I hope to be able to carry that on through to next year. I've got a new book lined up that I'm going to start on in the new year, and that's roughly titled The Experiences of a Paranormal Investigator, where I'm going to focus more on experiences that can be gained from the equipment that we use. And the idea is that if somebody starts and reads my new book, the book that's just out now, an introduction, if they read that because they're just getting into the field, I almost want them to grow with me, and I want them to read my next book, The Experiences, and to say, oh yeah, that's what I found, and I had that, and I had this, and to almost grow with me with their newfound interest, and almost have a similar timeline. That would be really great, and that's the plan. So there's hopefully going to be a series of these books, and the talks will come off the back of that as well. So yeah, it's great.
Phenomenal. With the podcast, the Paranormal Paradigm podcast, you interviewed a very dear friend of mine, Ron Mayer, about his Bigfoot Singularity book, it's just a fascinating book. And you did an incredible job of interviewing him. What have you got coming up on the Paranormal Paradigm podcast? You got any guests scheduled?
Well, we were due to have a video podcast come out this Monday. Unfortunately, the night we were going to record this week, my wife had a car crash. And,
oh my God!
Yeah,
I know. Okay?
She's fine. The baby's fine. It's a bit shook up. So that never happened. So we're going to record it Monday, probably now, and release it Tuesday or Wednesday. So it's only going to be a couple of days delayed. But we hate that. We hate telling people that it's going to be out on a date and have to change it. But we can't help it. But it's just going to be people have requested a video podcast, so we're going to do a video podcast where it's just me and Ben sitting talking about our experiences that we found on investigations, because that's what the listeners want. So we're going to do that. We've got another one of your guys actually going to be lined up for a November record, Susan Plunkett, who's going to be talking about her fifth-dimensional, multi-dimensional research, which I find fascinating, by the way. I can't wait for that interview.
With Susan is really doing the rounds now. I'm talking the big shows. She did an interview for me a couple of weeks ago, fifth dimension and sex in the fifth dimension, and it has blown minds. You, with your brain and the way you approach things, you are going to have an incredible interview with Susan. And trust me, right, she'll answer anything. So just go for gold on that one. Just go for gold.
Yeah. So she's coming up. She'll be coming on probably late November. And we did an episode with Melissa Martell, who hosts the Secret Door podcast. She came on to talk about green ladies and sightings in the UK. Unfortunately, we lost the audio to it, and we had to delete the episode. So we'll be re-recording an episode with Melissa to talk about green ladies and spirits at UK stately homes and manor houses and things like that. It's quite an interesting discussion. So yeah, we're constantly getting new people. If anyone wants to come on the show, just let us know. If you know of anyone that wants to come on the show, put us in touch with whoever you guys would like to hear on the show. And I think we're only 7 episodes in, so we're absolutely new kids on the block. But we've gained quite a loyal following already, and we're doing pretty well.
Doing superb. And I will be putting you in touch with David J. Moore, the author of Evolutionary Metaphors, and his Dudley Dorito sighting that just changed his life in the most profound way. You guys, I reckon you guys will probably do like about an 8-hour show, and it's going to be the fastest 8 hours of anyone's life. It will snap the elasticity of comprehension when you two are speaking together. It's going to be fantastic. What I always do at the end is I ask our guests to leave our listeners with a final thought, just something to leave them with. So over to you, Kieran.
I think my final thought is to go out, stay safe when you're investigating, of course, and just make it a very, very personal experience. Don't copy what you see on TV. Don't copy what you see other investigators doing when you've gone with them. Make it your own thing. And if you come up with a crazy theory that, sounds really out there, but it doesn't fit in with what the mainstream are telling you, go with it, because it could be the next best piece of evidence, the next best theory that we've got, and it could change the face of paranormal investigating.
You heard it, guys. That's Kieran Woodhouse, author of An Introduction to Paranormal Investigation. Go out and read it. My best to your wife and your little baby. My love to you and them. And thank you so much for one of the most engaging interviews I've ever had the pleasure of conducting. Thank you, Kieran.
Thank you, Gav. It's been a pleasure.
There we have it. An incredible interview from Kieran Woodhouse. Someone I think we can all agree on will be quite the force in the paranormal field of study. His thoughts on what resides in the spectrum of the unseen makes me think of how my cat and dog stare into space sometime. sometimes reacting to something we cannot see? Are they seeing something beyond our sensory capability? Do your pets have the same behaviours? Let me know. Kieran's book, An Introduction to Paranormal Investigation, is superb. It motivated me to want to go back out into the field of investigation. Read An Introduction to Paranormal Investigation and you will feel the same way. It is a superb read. I look forward to having Kieran Woodhouse back on the show and tumbling down the rabbit hole once again. If you want more paranormal knowledge, and did you know there's a free digital paranormal magazine out there for you? Yes, free for you, no subscription, no sign up, just hundreds of free paranormal articles for you across 4 free editions. So visit www.theparanormalchronicles.com/magazine to start reading today. So no sign up, no BS, just free reading. So get your free digital magazine at www.theparanormalchronicles.com/magazine. Right, one of our followers has won a signed copy of the best-selling Haunted Horror of Haverfordwest by yours truly. Thank you to Stick-Books for making this possible. If you're a new listener, then press follow now, as it could be your name I read out next month. So, the winner of this month's prize draw is Sal Phil 69. The winner of Haunted Horror of Haverfordwest is Sal Phil 69. So if Sal Phil 69 could please contact us either through the Paranormal Chronicles Facebook or Instagram accounts, or email paranormalchronicles@aol.com so we can post your copy. Congratulations, Sal Phil 69, and thank you to everyone that follows. There are more prize draws for books and Amazon vouchers coming up, so keep following. New listeners, press follow now and explore and download our incredible archive of paranormal experiences, research and eyewitness accounts. Let me leave you with this. As we approach the end of the year and the holiday season, I think of all the people that are alone, of those suffering from depression, grief and sadness, and it's important that every single person that listens to this show knows that your life is important. Your life matters and people do care for you. It is together that we explore the unknown, and please know that every time I upload an episode, I think of all of you with such great appreciation. I, as someone with bipolar, someone that suffers with suicidal depression, places so much value on all of you. Just knowing wherever you are out there in the world that we have connected. You, me, we are never alone, and your life matters. Thank you for listening. I am G.L. Davies, and this has been the Paranormal Chronicles podcast. Sleep well.